elimination of school property taxes. These are positive developments for homeowners who share my desire to completely replace school district property taxes. That concludes part of their statements. Folks, as you can see, they both completely support school property tax elimination, and they view this as the next step in a long struggle to find a better way to fund our public schools. Now, tonight, we have Representative Tom Calderon with us. We have coming Representative Jerry Knowles and Mark Gillen. To those three, and to others who had the courage, the Berks County Patriots want to thank you, Tom Calderon, Mark Gillen, and Jerry Knowles, for having the courage to vote for this bill, even though it is not 76, because you know this is a step in the right direction towards the goal of school property tax elimination. Folks, let's give them a big hand, please. Stand up, Tom. Tom Calderon, folks. Thank you, Tom. The Berks County Patriots thank all of you, our members, for all your support to help us get to this point. We will be asking you to participate in the future as this goes through the process. You will be hearing from Bruce Rader in early June. Bruce, who in addition to being a board member, also chairs the 76th agenda in our legislative committee. Look forward to hearing from him. He will give you some action items to contact different people to move this process even more through in the Senate. Folks, without grassroots support and activism from concerned citizens like you, this could not and would not be happening. Give yourself a big hand as well. God bless you all, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Sam. You said that was 1834 legislation, right? No. The year, 1834. Well, we kind of always pick on Rod for being the old guy. Rod, do you remember when they signed that into law? He might, we're not sure. So Rod, at this time, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you.
You're lucky you're not wearing it. Okay, I'm Rod Miller, as my colleague said, Legislative Committee Chairman and of course, a Board of Director. First of all, is Mark Gillen here yet? Is Jerry Knowles here yet?
No.
Okay. They made phone calls and are on their way. They have other commitments today as well, but they need to be part of our panel. Okay, as it is. This evening, of course, was planned initially to be called the Super Town Hall meeting, and we sent invites out to 13 legislators and senators, all with some kind of constituency within Berks County. Unfortunately, only 3 of the 13 have agreed to be here this evening to help discuss the budget, the issues, and allow us to tell them what our issues are, so that over the course of May and into June, they'll have our feelings to take with them, because all through June, they will be working on the budget, and there'll be compromises between the House and the governor Of course, the House is majority Republican, the governor is Democrat, so you know that there are going to be some tough choices. And we're anticipating that tonight we'll give them some ammunition as to where we think we ought to be going on some of these tough choices. I would have liked it now to introduce the panelists, but since Tom is the only one that was prompt, and I thank him for that, I'll go a little bit further and hopefully they'll arrive before we get into the Q&A portion. So, as of now, of course, we're looking at a governor's proposed budget, which is a 15% increase over the spending of the past year. And we understand that that obviously is not going to be the final draft. It just won't happen that way. There'll be all kind of machinations and changes until they have something that the House will approve and the governor would sign. So that's what the two-party system is all about. I would point out, and unfortunately, the two legislators that represent the majority party in both the House, Senate, and the governorship over the past 4 years have not yet arrived, but in spite of that, they'll have to understand that we here and you folks out there are fully aware of the issues. If we've been talking every month for the past 5 years, and you've attended multiple times, you know where we stand on many of the issues. And concerns that we have, if I only cited a few examples, there are others that have declared that Pennsylvania is the most corrupt state in the nation as far as the government goes. And you can only think over the past year or two, we have 2 Supreme Court justices, one shamefully resigned for distributing pornography, and the other one for using public funds for her private re-election. Not to overlook our Attorney General, who now has been indicted for leaking information that was confidential information from grand jury committees. Thanks, that brain not clear. In addition to that, we have, I guess, at least one, if not 2, speakers of the House served time. We have a senator, we have other politicians. So there's been a plethora of politicians and higher officials have felt the wrath of the courts and the wrath of us for inappropriate behavior and issues which basically are challenging the ethics of government. I was afraid our moderator tonight had one of my sheets, but I found it. We also talked about Pennsylvania being the biggest and most expensive full-time legislature in the nation. And they were looking at the salaries, their COLA, their perks, their pensions, and travel expenses. With all of that, again, our majority party must take the heat for this. They've not solved the pension crisis, the property tax, privatization of liquor stores. We're one of only 2 states to have government-run liquor stores. Paycheck protection, right to work. You imagine Michigan now has a right to work law. Detroit, Michigan, the heart of the automotive industry, the real central focus of unionization. They saw the need for a right to work law. Pennsylvania does not yet see it. I don't know what it's going to take, but I've been on that one since 1968. I'm not quitting. I may not be around when it's passed, but I'm not quitting. Okay. That's just some of the examples that I want to mention. That all these examples may not sound like they affect the budget, but I assure you, in one way or another, everything I addressed, they're related to budget, and particularly the pensions and the property tax. So that's all fair game for tonight for Q&A when we got our panel going. I will have to explain the procedure without Tom's two colleagues, and they'll have to stumble through it. Unfortunately, Mark Gillen called me at the last minute and said that he would try to be here by 7 o'clock, which that's what I have. Hopefully, he will make it. And likewise, Jerry Knowles said he would try to be here not much after 7. So, as it is, you're going to get help, Tom. It's just that it hasn't shown yet. Here's the way we're going to do this. We'll allow each of the panelists up to 5 minutes to state their position on issues or the budget or anything they wish to bring up, and they can pontificate for the 5. We'll get all of the panelists to have a time to set the stage from their perspective. We'll then go right into the questions period. And the way we'll do this, we're going to alternate the questions. Your committee has spent days researching and developing questions, some of the subjects I mentioned. However, it's your organization and we need you participating. So we're going to have cards available, and if you have a question on your mind at this moment, you can write it down now. If something dawns on you as we go through Q&A, where a thought came to be where you need to have a question answered, we'll handle it then. So anytime anybody has a question, raise your hand, and Bruce will come around with a card and a pen. Write down what your question is. You can sign it or turn it over anonymously. It doesn't matter. If you sign it, we'll acknowledge where it came from, and we'll alternate between your questions and the ones we generated. And we only say that so there's some real tough issues and questions we'd like to see on the floor, and we certainly don't expect all you folks to do the kind of homework that we have to do. So in order to make sure that the solid stuff gets on the floor for discussion, we made sure we have some of those questions. Now the questions, like I said, need to be related to the budget. That doesn't mean any of those other things I mentioned can't be a direct question. So it'll certainly tie to the budget, and we'll be sure it has relevance. We would ask the panelists to attempt to be reasonably direct with the answers, and try to keep it to the subject in order that we get a lot of questions on the floor, a lot of answers, a lot of ideas, so that we can leave here this evening and think that we've discussed the issues.
What? Right. They're all here.
Okay. Okay, Representative Jerry Knowles coming forward. Thank you, Jerry, for rushing. I realize there's conflicts. And Representative Mark Gillen called me this afternoon. He didn't surprise us. He told me he'd make every effort to be here. So if you two gentlemen will have a seat up there in a second, and we'll get the show on the road. Thank you for coming. The only thing I would repeat for the benefit of you two folks. Tom heard it all, but we're going to alternate questions between the audience and the ones we've written. And after the question is asked, we'll ask the panelists to attempt to be reasonably brief and direct to the question in order that we get as many answered as we can. Other than that, I've addressed the group with our concerns with what's out there related to the budget, property taxes, pensions, you know what they are, certainly. And I didn't punish the Republicans that were in power all this time, and that's where these issues are laying, with the Republicans in the majority, to make sure that Tom knows it's a two-way street here. Okay, having said all that, let me do this. I slowed down what I had to say in hopes that they would arrive before it was time to announce. So may I introduce our panelists first and ask, first of all, Representative Mark Gillen, who's the 128th District Rep. Please have a seat up here, Mark. You got a tent in front of whichever seat is yours. In addition, then we have Representative Jerry Knowles, the 126th District. 124, you're right. Sorry.
You guys better be right on that one.
Yeah. You might be pushing for the wrong votes in the wrong district. And finally, we have Tom Calderon, who's the 127th. And that's our three elected officials. Remember, these are the three, call it guts, call it what you will. They're willing to sit up here and listen to us, and we're their employer. Remember that. Okay. Now, because we were light on our representative and legislators' response, we did search for a third party to have a perspective from a taxpayer or organizations that are really there lobbying in the interest of non-politicians, so to speak. And through doing that, we've decided and appreciate that what we've got now is a representative of the Americans for Prosperity, and that's Beth Ann Mumford. So Beth Ann, please join the three colleagues up here. And now, my final responsibility here is to have you meet our moderator. We dialed her in for years on afternoon radio, WEU, and certainly we found somebody that can be very fair to make sure that both political views are felt and our concerns are on the table. And she now is the vice president of the People Chronicles. So she's still out there interviewing people, just changed hats a little bit. And she will take care of all the moderating. She certainly knows how to turn off debate and pull the plug on phone callers, and I'm sure she can handle elected officials as well. So with all those credentials, I'd like you to give us a warm welcome for Joe Painter.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you for having me, and I gotta say, thank you, Representative Gillen, calling me to go to order. If it's out of hand, I appreciate that. We may need that. I want to start really by saying thank you for coming out tonight. Having spent 30 years in radio and listening to public discourse about a variety of political issues, we found we've arrived at a place of apathy, a lot of that goes on, and a place of, well, not really sure what is even going on. We get to election day and you can't imagine, you've heard it, who should I vote for? You don't think, who should I vote for? Ask your neighbor. So we vote for our elected officials, and as we know, it's their job they are stewards of our government and stewards of what is in our best interest. And I thought we could start just briefly. I heard somebody said there's a civics class. So just so we understand our purpose here tonight, the governor has proposed a budget. It is the largest general fund spending in the history of the state. And then there's lots of blaming going on. But what happens next? We get to talk about it. We get to analyze what's in that budget, what do we like, and what don't we like. So in that process, may I ask our representatives here this evening, where does the ball go next? Does it go to the House? Does it go to the Senate? Who has the most power? And for the benefit of all the constituents here, who should they air their concerns to? To whom first? I apologize for that. Jerry Knowles, Representative Jerry Knowles, we'll talk about that first. Is that mic on?
Thank you very much, and it's always good to have a radio personality here. I'm sure you'll have no problem with three gentlemen and a lady. You tell us to stop talking and we will. Yeah, I'm including you. I'm only kidding, Mark and I. This goes on all the time. It is indeed a very interesting time in Harrisburg, and I think the fun is about to start on June the 1st. We go back on June the 1st, and that is when I expect that we'll be very busy for Lord knows how long in coming up with an acceptable budget. One thing I think it's important to remember is that it's a starting point, okay? It's a starting point, and I can guarantee you that the final budget will look nothing like what has been proposed by the governor, because as has been indicated, it is a $4.7 billion increase in spending. That's from $29.1 billion to $33.8 billion. And I gotta tell you, the guy sitting next to me, I admire him so much for being here, because it's good that you can hear both sides of the aisle, and I'm given the opportunity to hear that. I will tell you that the Berks delegation gets along very well. We respect each other. Don't always get along in terms of the issue, but I tell Tom all the time that he has the right to be wrong, right? But Tom is a great guy. But just to put it in perspective, when you think about the increased spending, in the course of the Corbett administration, I mean, it really grew very little. It really grew very little over the course. And bear in mind that when Rendell was there, in the course of the 8 years, it went from 20 billion to 28 billion. I guess when Corbett left, it was somewhere around 29 billion.
Jerry?
Yes.
Can I interrupt just for a moment? Just till we get to the questions, and so in the interest of getting everybody's question, we're really trying to find out, what's the process next? Does it go to the House? Does it go to the Senate? Who debates first?
Okay, I'm sorry. You'll probably see a bill come out of the House. Is where you'll probably see
So it comes out of the House and then it goes to the Senate?
Yeah, now remember that during the course of these last couple of weeks that the Appropriations Committee has been held on their hearings. None of the three of us are on the Appropriations Committee, but they held their hearings. And the bill will most likely start in the House, and I think you will see that happen within the next week or two.
Thank you very much.
But I'll shut up.
And you're talking about, you don't have to shut up, I'm just trying to keep it on track in the interest of getting everybody's questions answered. You're talking about the Appropriations Committee, and there are 4 Berks County legislators on that committee, none of whom are here. They are all senators. Senator Arville, Senator Schwenk, Senator Mensch, and Senator Rafferty. What influence, so you say it has to come out of appropriations, what influence do they have on the budget overall?
Well, let me just say this. Bill Ladoff, the Republican chairman of the majority, will report the House bill, from what I was told, on June the 1st when we go back. That is probably going to look completely different, I'm sure, from what the governor has proposed. What will happen is they'll vote that bill out of committee. It'll come to the floor of the House. Amendments will be offered either up or down on whatever members want to put into those amendments. And then it will finally, final version will go over to the Senate. They all go through the same process, amending it and trying to work on compromises. And that's when the rubber hits the road, because the administration will be sitting down with the leaders, and no disrespect meant to any of us, but what happens many times is the Democratic and Republican leaders sit down with the governor's key people, and they work out a version, which then is either accepted or rejected, and they smooth out some of the issues, of which we're probably going to be talking about, some of them with the pension and liquor store and all that other stuff. And there's going to be give and take. There always give and take with any governor. And Democrat or Republican, House or Senate, it doesn't matter. The governor, he proposes, we dispose. And then it will be the final up or down vote when it finally, the final version that they work out in both the House and Senate.
Thank you. That makes sense. It's a lot of work. It has to be done by June 30th. Pundits are already saying that's not going to happen. I understand you guys canceled vacations for the summer. That's just what I'm hearing. So now it's going to the House. They duke it out, goes to the Senate, they duke it out, and the top leaders discuss what's going on. There are a number of issues. Pension has come up. I think I've heard it at least 4 times already this evening. And I find it interesting because on Friday evening on WITF's Smart Talk, Jake Corman is the Senate Majority Leader. And he said that nothing will happen until pension reform is addressed first. It's tough talk. It's certainly tough talk, but it is a strong stance. Apparently the House scheduled a June 4th meeting, so you gentlemen will be discussing at this meeting. You don't look surprised. The fast-tracked bill that the Senate put through without a hearing, apparently, and they say the issue will be hammered out, but he's holding his guns and saying there'll be no movement until pension is addressed first. So we'll start with the pension, but we didn't get to hear from Beth Ann. Beth Ann is with Americans for Prosperity, and I think it's important to find out what is Americans for Prosperity and what is your role in the process?
Sure. So I'm State Director of Americans for Prosperity. It's a grassroots organization. Many of you participated in our events in the past. Our goal is to address these budget issues from the taxpayer standpoint, really, which is most of us know how much money we make and we plan our spending around it. What we find a lot at the state capitol is they all get together to decide what kind of things they want to do and how much they want to spend, and then they go off looking for the money to cover it. So we want to make sure we've got that fiscal sanity at the state capitol. We see most of our issues as spending issues, not revenue or lack of tax money issues. Over the last 45 years, the state budget in Pennsylvania has grown from $4 billion, or government spending from $4 billion in 1971 to $71 billion today. So we don't have a problem with spending, we have a problem figuring out how we're going to pay for it. And often what lawmakers want to do is come back to the taxpayers and get more money. What we want to say is stop. You've got the money out of the economy. What we should look at is ways of lowering the tax burden on people and lowering spending. We do that exactly how you do that. You spend time talking to your legislators, talking to the folks in Harrisburg when they're back here in their districts. They need to hear from you. I know you're a very active organization. We work with other organizations around the state to bring that taxpayer and citizen voice into Harrisburg.
Thank you very much, and I think it was eloquently spoken, and we talk about that many times with our school districts, because that's what speaks and screams the loudest at us, because we have to fund that, and it's a wish list. The schools don't make a budget, they make a wish list. So let's start with the first question that has come from the Berks County Patriots. Pennsylvania's pension crisis keeps worsening. Somebody's passing out money, and that's for a hot dog or water?
Very rare.
Is that the, I thought maybe that was the first contribution to the unfunded pension liability. We talk about a budget, a state budget that is so expensive and is ballooning out of control and is requiring, in order to balance it, higher taxes. And then we talk about the pension. You realize much of the liability for that pension is unfunded. That's not even in the budget. So the liability for the pension, which is, depending on where you look, 52 billion, 50 billion, 48 billion. I've seen all three of those numbers. And then you look at the budget and go, wait, but this budget crisis? That doesn't even include the pension. So we'll start with pension questions first and see where some folks stand. From the Berks County Patriots, $1.7 billion, or 6% of the budget this year, is going to pensions. The crisis has worsened despite the stock market doing rather well. That's been the excuse. The market's bad, that's why the crisis is so bad. At the state level, taxpayer contributions to pension plans will increase to $3.3 billion, or 10% of the budget. This rate of increase is unsustainable and increasingly unacceptable. So how does the governor's proposed budget address this? And how would you address it? We'll start with you, Tom Caltron.
All right, real quick, I want to give you a quick bird's eye view of what I did this past summer with a very close Republican friend of mine who's a financial consultant, 30 years in the business. We looked at the previous years. Each board, the state employees retirement system and the public school district employees retirement system, two different boards. First of all, we looked at who sat on them. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 2 House and 2 Senate. However, the majority on both boards are appointed by the governor. So let's find out who these people are and what they do. So we looked at them. Surprise, surprise. They make a lot of the financial decisions. Now listen to this, any of you that invest out there. They put 47 to 49% of both funds in risk investments. Risk investments, okay? We used to have a bill, legislation, that you couldn't do more than 2%. That was removed several years back. It's just stupid. We need to put that back on the books, 1. 2, the management fees. And finally, the governor has jumped on board. And both Republicans and Democrats agree on this. The high management fees with our funds, the public school employees funds, $500 to $600 million a year, management fees. With the state, $1.7 billion in a 5-year period, management fees. They're making more money in New York than we are. Vanguard in Montgomery County, they do indexing and they do not charge management fees. If they make money, you make money. Why aren't we investing with them? It's a Pennsylvania-based company. All right, in addition to that, the employees of both funds have continued religiously to pay into our funds. 4.5%, 5.5%, some of 7%. So don't blame the retirees or their employees. And that was the Republican consultant that I worked with, he agreed with me 100%. It was the risk investments, and during previous administrations, they gave either nothing, because the stock market was so high, they didn't put any money into the pot. Same way with the school districts. Almost all school districts stopped putting money into the pension funds. Ergo, that helped to create the problem that we're having today. He told me that if they would have been investing the right way, prudent investments instead of risk, we would have doubled our money in both funds. We would have $50 billion in the state fund and over $100 billion in the school district fund. Now, he said to me, follow the money. I mean, what are you talking about? Let's see who's getting political contributions from those fat cats in New York. Democrat and Republican leaders, both. And I examined it with the financial institutions in New York, 500,000, 300,000, 400,000, McCord, 1 million. He was sitting on both boards. He was a former treasurer who resigned in disgrace, who was being prosecuted. Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate, leadership particularly, are getting big, big contributions. I have a bill in, Code of Ethics, you get nothing. Whether you're a local municipal pension official or a state, it's a felony if you take a nickel. Nothing. Bill's been sitting in the state government committee. I've been trying to get Darrell Metcalf to move the bill. I did Darrell a very big favor when I was in the majority. in judiciary, I moved the Castle Doctrine out of the committee, which became law. I'm the guy that helped to get the Castle Doctrine. Okay? So I'm just trying to share with you, and I don't want to hog this up, but having spent several weeks looking over these pension systems, it's a phony baloney lie. They're trying to blame the pensioners and those that are in the system. It's those people in New York that are investing our money that are not handling our money properly. And here we go again. We're on the merry-go-round again. Oh, Tom, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, the new member, McGinnis, John, Republican, former professor, economics and financial planning, him and I have teamed up. He's got a bill to do something very similar that I want to do, and we're saying we need to put manners on both those boards because they're not handling our money properly. End of message. I'm sorry, guys.
I understand, and thank you for that, Tom. I understand in a news story from Associated Press that the governor's proposal, and it's kind of a separate question, he's proposing $3 billion in bonds be issued to refinance this pension liability. But as you read down in the story, he's calling for, I understand it, for PSERs and SERs to cut investment management fees by 0.6 percentage points, saving $200 million annually. So that speaks a little bit to at least a knowledge of what you are talking about and where these exorbitant fees are coming from. It is the elephant in the room. Where do Americans for Prosperity stand on the pension issue?
Well, it's one of our priority issues because it really impacts the future of Pennsylvania. So that $50 billion in, we call it unfunded liabilities, that's money that every taxpayer owes. For every man, woman, and child in Pennsylvania, that's $4,000 owed to cover those pension obligations. And the truth is, it's not the folks in the system, it's not their fault. They have paid into the system. It's the lawmakers who have failed them. Right. On those, they have been failed by the people that are supposed to be managing those programs, but we're all on the hook for it because it's an obligation of the state. And the thing about it is that it squeezes out all of the other good government spending. So if there are things that you want and you think the government should do, you want it to do it well, as this unfunded liability continues to grow, we're going to have fewer and fewer dollars and cents to give to other programs that we want, so it needs to be tackled. I think long-term, we'd like to see some reforms to move new retirees into a defined contribution plan, kind of like a 401k plan. That doesn't fix all the problems, but it at least stops the bleeding. The $50 billion that we talk about is the public number that we talk about. Maybe you heard something when you work with your financial planners. There are actuaries who say that it could be, closer to double that, realistically, when you look at the numbers. So until that gets fixed, it's going to be very difficult in Pennsylvania to build the kind of economic growth and opportunity that we all want to see, because that obligation by law is required to be paid. So it just squeezes out everything else for the future, and somebody's going to have to pay it, and it's going to be taxpayers.
Since that has to be paid, and it does, and that's why we're starting with pensions, this, before anything else happens, this needs to be addressed. And I want to hear from Representative Mark Gillen, who's been quiet down at the end. On May 13th, the Senate passed a pension reform bill. And this has been floating around for quite some time, as you gentlemen know, and it was pretty much the Governor Corbett's great disappointment that it wasn't resolved and fixed before he left office. But on May 13th, a pension reform bill was passed, and it seeks to end the traditional defined benefits pension system. It covers about 330,000 retirees or beneficiaries, and it requires concessions from many of the 350,000 current state government and public school employees. According to the PSEA, or the Pennsylvania Education Association, the Pennsylvania Union, the concession would amount to a 20% reduction in benefits. It would not affect current retirees, but it would mean that new hires would be left with benefits about a third the size of the employees hired under the current rules, and they would have a 401k plan. How do you feel about that proposal, Representative Kelly?
Well, first of all, government shouldn't be voting on something that members of that government have not read. I met with senators and they had voted on it and they had not read the proposal. It's over 400 pages long. I don't care how good the proposal is. I don't care how close it brings you to solvency. We have a responsibility to read after the fact. We're going to read it after the implementation. I'm not at variance with the concept in terms of moving toward solvency. But when I repeatedly hear from state senators that they did not read the product that they voted on, I get concerned about it, regardless of the quality of the product. We need to have public hearings. We intend to do that in the House of Representatives. We're going to peruse the proposal. Regarding the PSA or any other entities out there, I will say this. Certified educator, never full-time in the classroom. I appreciate the hard work that teachers are doing. What I would say to my friends in education, nobody's going to benefit from an insolvent system. This thing can go belly up. What I will assert to you, I will not be voting for anything that bonds. My daughter is here. She's 13 years old. This is going to land on her shoulders. Raise your hand if you have a defined benefit pension program. You have a defined benefit program. Raise your hand in this room. Okay, we've got a relatively few. God bless you. I'm glad for you. Here's the truth of the plan. It borrows and increases taxes to maintain the current status quo with regard to the pension. The truth is, in 2001, because the process was politicized, we had legislators voting themselves a 50% increase in their pension and 25% increase for others, and then the following year there was a COLA and the system was underfunded. Guess what? It's bound to fail, and we've got to move away from this failed system, and those people that have been faithfully paying in, and in some cases paying in significantly, 8, 9, and 10%, they shouldn't be placed in a position that their money is lost because of the mismanagement of their government.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the passion in that one.
I will be very...
I want to put this question for you, and following up on that, in an effort to pay that, the governor is proposing floating these bonds to restructure the debt, essentially, and reduce the payments that we're paying, so make it more affordable. It's my understanding that a law was passed in 2010 forbidding obligation bonds. And that's basically the proposal that's coming from the governor. What, if anything, would be done to stop this, and do you think it should be stopped, Representative Knowles?
No, I would not support any additional borrowing, absolutely not. What I was going to say is that when people say to me, is the pension issue going to be addressed? The answer that I give them is it has to be addressed. There's no alternative here. We got a $50 billion hole that we need to fill. And the whole problem is that we've got three different angles or three different groups. The first group are people who voted for Act 120 back in 2010, and what that did is it increased the vesting from 5 to 10, it reduced the multiplier to 2, you can't take out your lump sum withdrawal, and they increased the age to 65, okay? And there's some people that believe that that is enough, and that over a course of time, it's going to take care of things. There's another group of people where I think I fall, and that is that we need to address employees who are starting today or after we pass this bill.
How do you propose to address them?
Well, there cannot be a defined benefit. It has to go to a 401k. It has to go to a defined contribution, and that's the way the real world does it, and that's what we need to go to.
And if we talk about that right now, we can go round and round about, we have to resolve this. We do. It's $52 billion unfunded. Moving forward, you say you support a 401k rather than a defined benefit. Do you support that as well, Representative Caltagirone?
I'd have to see the details, because there's going to be give and take. We can pardon me, discuss these issues here tonight, but these two gentlemen know as well as I do. There will be a select group in the appropriations process that will sit down and work on a lot of these details and make a commitment and say, just like Jerry was saying, we don't know. He said the 400-page bill. Can you imagine voting blindly on something without reading it? And that's how we get into trouble up there. They push this stuff at the 11th hour, and in this particular issue, it's going to be a massive, voluminous piece that they're going to try to shove down our throats, and you better be careful what you buy into because you don't know where it's going to lead us.
Why does it take a 400-page bill to move forward? You gotta give this one to Representative Gillen. Why does it take 400 pages to say we will end defined benefits, we will meet all obligations to those benefits up until this day, and moving forward, we will switch to a 401k, which is the constant proposal out there. What takes 400 pages? Is that because there's, well, if I'll agree to that if you do this, and I'll agree to that if you do that? Is that how this is working?
My answer is, God only knows.
Mary Beth, do you know? Beth Ann, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Beth? Right, go ahead, Representative Gillen, you want to comment on, I'm just trying to get it's not 400 pages, it's simple. Would you support a transition from defined plans to a 401k?
Let me answer the 400-page
Okay.
for starters, and thank you again very much for moderating, and thank you, audience, for putting up with us. And can I say something macro about bipartisanship? I don't know that I've got any closer friends in the House than these two guys. I had one fundraiser in 4 years, and Tom Calderone came to the fundraiser. How much did he donate? Nothing. Okay, but he was...
Just put $2 out of his pocket or that.
he was there. All right, when the hat came around tonight, let's just talk common sense. All right, I pulled a credit card out and said, would you accept a credit card? That wasn't accepted here. It's not acceptable in state government. If we can't afford it as a family, we don't buy it. We have a responsibility to live within our means as legislators. I was asked about hail damage to my car. I was in the strike zone. I drive a 94 Buick, okay? It was plenty damaged before the hailstorm, all right? We can talk in absolutes, we can talk in abstracts about the best plan or 400 pages. You know what? I think we can transition into an acceptable plan that the public can understand that's only a couple pages long. You're paying the bills ultimately. I'm not as concerned about me understanding it as you understanding it. I think it's unnecessarily bureaucratic. I think it's symptomatic of the problem that we have. I am on a shared risk plan. I am not on a defined benefit plan. That works well for me. But the bottom line is this. We cannot afford the course that we're on. We don't have an option. We've got to change direction, and it's going to have to happen now.
Thank you very much.
If I may, it's also the investment practices. As all of you know, if you do any investing, you've got to know what you're doing. And if those investors in New York are making more money off of our money, then there's something drastically wrong. In addition to that, we've got to stop this nonsense where political money is coming in, influencing those that can make the appointments, whether they're Democrat or Republican leaders or state treasurers. I think it needs to be stopped. And when you follow that money, and I've talked to some of the members that serve on those boards that are brothers of us in the legislature, and they don't think there's anything wrong.
Who picks these investors for the PSCR fund?
The boards.
Okay.
The boards do. Now, remember, we've got 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, 2 House, 2 Senators that sit on those boards. And I've talked to some of them, said, this nonsense has got to stop. Why aren't we doing business with Vanguard, who doesn't charge us any management fees? And they've done quite well, thank you, over the years as far as the rate of return. It's a Pennsylvania-based company. What is wrong with us? And they look at me like I'm half crazy, and I'm thinking, no, you're crazy. You're taking the money campaign contributions, which I think should be made illegal in this state, or anybody directly or indirectly receiving that kind of money, because until we stop that, they're going to continue to do the same practices in investment and taking money, campaign contributions, that influences what goes on up there in Wall Street. End of message.
And is there a bill in committee to do
Yes,
just
I
that?
have a bill.
What is the bill number, please?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. It's in the State Government Committee, and I've been pleading with Darrell Metcalf, bring it up for a vote, have a hearing on it, expose it. Matter of fact, if you want to, put your name on the bill. You know, I have no pride of authorship. I've done that several times. Truancy, you know, he carried the ball when I couldn't get it through. He got the legislation through. And I said that same thing to Darrell. I said, take the bill, be my guest. You want to be prime sponsor on it? Go right ahead. But we need to address it.
I only asked for the number because these are engaged citizens who care, and they could call your representatives, your senators, and say, hey, that bill that was sponsored by Representative Calderon that addresses who's getting paid for those investment monies, push it out of committee.
It's the Code of Ethics, I call it.
Code of Ethics bill. Okay, thank you. And can we hear from Beth Ann Mumford, because we're wondering, how do the Americans for Prosperity, a nonpartisan group looking at these issues, how does that organization feel about moving from defined benefit to 401k?
We support it.
You do?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We think that workers are probably, well, we're talking about the investors and their conflicts of interest. You know, people whose money it is are going to be much more inclined to manage it wisely and responsibly. Moving to those combined defined contribution plans, which most of you have, we just saw by the show of hands, gets the state, stops the bleeding, and we think it's a good step.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move from pensions. We have a whole bunch of issues going on.
One more quick thing on the pensions. I'm working with the state FOP. They had approached me and Glenn Grell, who's a Republican representative from Cumberland County. He just recently left for a job with the state pension board, as a matter of fact, the executive director of PSER. There are 840, and this affects you locally, all of us, because there are 840 police departments. Half of them are 10 members or less. They've approached me to ask what can, and Glenn Grell and I were both working on this, to form a consolidation among into the pool. Will, you know, get this under control, because your local property taxes are affected by the pensions from the local police, fire, if you have paid police or paid fire or non-uniformed employees. So we've been working on for the last several months, putting together a plan to help solve the municipal pension problem, which is about $7.7 billion. However, when you take Philadelphia out, that's $4.5 billion. Pittsburgh is about $500 billion. The rest of us, it's $1.7 billion, which we feel is manageable, which can help eliminate the rising cost in the local property tax, which municipals have to pay. So I just wanted to share that with you, because we've been working on that problem also.
Thank you very much. And since you brought up property tax, we have a question from the audience and a number. I'd like to get to your questions. From Peter Coldren. He wants to talk about property taxes. He talks about that 1834 tax. Why and for what purpose was that bill signed in? I don't know if any of you gentlemen were around in 1834. If you know the history of that bill as to why that might have been signed in, how is it supposed to be appropriated? So how is the school tax that we pay right now supposed to be appropriated, and is it properly appropriated to the school districts?
Okay, help me out. Is that Stan Sealer's bill? Is that the one we're talking
No, I believe Peter is referencing our current property tax system. The property taxes we pay, how is it supposed to be appropriated, and is it properly appropriated?
Well, one of the things in the Commonwealth was to fund education. Pure and simple. They wanted public education to be something for the masses of people. And the funding stream, as they passed it in 1834, that was dedicated for education. Fast forward to the 60s, and the sales tax, when that came into being, all of the money from the sales tax, I guess it was probably under SHAP, was initially to go specifically for education. And then slowly but surely, and you can blame all of us, I wasn't there, none of these guys were there, they started raising the sales tax, but it wasn't all allocated. If they would do with what Jimmy Cox and Dave Argon are proposing, if that money would go, it would totally eliminate the school district property tax. But slicing and dicing it, only a portion of it goes to it, you know. I guess it's close to 11 billion out of the 29 billion budget. 13 billion for welfare, 11 billion goes into education.
So you're talking about how the intent of a tax, sales tax came in, was supposed to fund education, didn't all go that way. And that lends itself to the second portion of Peter's question. And boy, this is a loaded question, but one that makes us all go like this, and it's a tough question, gentlemen. Why is it so difficult to rid government of corruption? I'm just the moderator.
I don't know. I mean, most of the people that I work with in Harrisburg are good, decent people who are there for the right reasons. And you're going to have corruption anywhere you go. It's very embarrassing what we have gone through over the course of the last 10 years or so. We've got people that went to jail, and I don't get it. I mean, I sit here with both of these guys. They're two good, decent gentlemen who are there for the right reasons. And I don't know whether it's the fact that some people get greedy, some people begin to lose a perspective on what's right and wrong. Some people feel power, and they think they can do anything.
Please.
Just a word, Joe. I think there's something very practical that I like to do when I'm in Harrisburg, is come back to Berks County every night. I don't stay over. I drive my own car there. I don't take the per diems. I don't have any hotel bills. Guess what? The 94 Buick has worked for the last 4 years. There is a culture in Harrisburg that begins to envelop you, begins to cloud your reasoning. Because every night of the week, you can have a lobbyist wine and dine you. You're getting a per diem, but you're not actually paying for your food and beverage, and they're working you over every single night. It's 71 miles from my door to the Capitol in Harrisburg, and when we kick into budget season, I might get back 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and get in the car and drive back. I think one of the greatest insulating influences is your pillow and your bed, because you realize the community that you were sworn constitutionally to represent. I think we've got too many people that call themselves representatives in Harrisburg that are representing Harrisburg and not the values of the community that they came from.
You know, there's an old saying about power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you get leaders, either party, and we've had problems in both parties, they control massive budgets, massive staffs, and then they punish people for not going along, like me and my big mouth. I've received that kind of wrath over the years from my own leaders because I stand up for what I believe in. And just recently I was punished because I was stripped of my chairmanship because I didn't go along with the party leaders up there. And I don't care. I'm not there for that. I'm there for you. And that's what it's really about.
Just for a moment, just if I could take you inside the world of Harrisburg. I got a call on a Saturday night from a leader, and this goes back a couple years, during the redistricting time. By the way, redistricting is done to us, it's not done for us. We don't have a vote. But we do have a vote on congressional redistricting. And when I looked at the map, I was convinced it wasn't in the best interest of the community. The congressional map we have a vote on, but the State House we do not. And it was so chopped up, and it was lacking in compactness, I thought it disenfranchised Berks County as a community. And I made a decision that I was voting against that map, even though it was our party's map. I got a call on a Saturday night. The leader said to me, "There's a rumor that you're not voting for our map." I said, boy, I'm sorry that rumor's out there, I apologize. I said, I'm not voting for the map under any circumstances. My wife and I had a Saturday night date, and here's what was said next. There will be consequences for that. And I'm not exactly sure what the consequences have been, but it really doesn't matter to me, because Berks County was carved up like a turkey, and when that's done, you have to stand your ground, whatever the consequences are. I'm not concerned about the next election. I'm concerned that I go home with a clear conscience because I've got 5 daughters and my wife that I have to look at me than bowing down to what the leadership is interested in having me vote on.
Thank you. And speaking of leadership, this question was just put forth here. It says Representative Gillen, so they're listening. Yeah, this is live. Representative Gillen said that their 50% increase for state pensions and 25% increase for teachers' pensions. Those increases caused most of the problem. But no one said anything about cutting them back. And then it says the point being, if legislators can raise their pensions by law, why can't they pass a law to reduce them?
This is 3 in a row, this is my question. Act 120 did actually reduce the multiplier. Jerry mentioned that. It increased the vestment period of time. You've got to be older in order to retire. Your compensation is going to be less. The savings, in my view, were substantial, but probably insufficient to create solvency in the actual system. Now, we've got some case law, frankly, that's being looked at right now. We have some court decisions that have come down in Illinois and Oregon and other places. What has been proposed in the Senate is being studied very carefully in the legal community to determine whether it's been constitutional, whether it's constitutional or not. And frankly, I will do whatever it takes to create solvency for the taxpayer. But if part of this answer lies in pension obligation bonds, and if part of this answer lies in increasing taxes, I'm heading for the exits because I'm not going to be part of any such plan.
Thank you very much. And one last thing on pensions, because there's a lot of other topics. Part of the issue is how it's invested, and there's a bill to address who makes those decisions. And Beth Ann Mumford looked it up. What is the number?
Representative Durham's bill is House Bill 845.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on from that, and let's look at property taxes. House Bill 845, you got that? Property taxes, what bill is that? Anybody here know? I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, I'll bet you it's 76.
Oh, right. Ding, 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 ding. Representative Mills gets that answer. Okay, let's look at the budget that is being proposed. The governor, in this proposal, has proposed property tax relief measures, while at the same time allowing school boards to continue to raise property taxes. That was done by the last governor, and is being proposed this time as well. The new budget is seeing, what they're saying will be a reduction in property taxes from $3.6 to $3.8 billion property tax reduction. And that is because the personal income tax is rising 21% from 3.07 to 3.7%. Sales tax is going up 10% to 6.6%. Again, these are proposed numbers. Considering any bills other than Senate Bill, House Bill 76, what assurance is there that the property taxes will not ratchet back up to current levels, because it is not a complete reduction? And while there is a $3.6 to $3.8 billion property tax reduction, there's also $6.2 billion in new taxes. So you're getting less than half back of what you're paying.
Before the gentleman arrived, it was mentioned about Stan Saylor's amendment. That was a very, very critical vote. We all voted for it. There were two in our delegation.
Can you be specific? What amendment?
It was 830, and basically 860, and basically what it did was reduce, it was similar to 76.
Yep.
This was a trial vote.
Yep.
It was 109 in favor, 33 Democrats and 76 Republicans. That was very, very, very critical. That's the first time we've had an actual solid vote to increase income and sales tax to start to eliminate school district property tax.
Therein lies the rub. It starts to eliminate, not eliminate.
Well, it was a test vote.
Okay.
And it got through, and it got through the final passage of the bill. It was 105 to whatever the 80 number was. Went over to the Senate. Now, I talked to Senator Argyle, and and that was today, what he's planning to do is amend that bill with Senate Bill 76. If that happens, and they can pass it in the Senate, and I'm assured they have the votes to do that, it'll go back to the House on concurrence. And I know all of us in the Berks delegation are in favor of that.
How would
Just give
that
us
be
a chance.
incorporated into the budget? Can it be? That's the next step. How does that work?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that needs to be noted here, the governor is the kind of guy you'd like to have a coffee with, but he scares the living hell out of me because he's a very likable guy. You can't help but like him, but he's very slick. He's a slick guy. He invited us over to the mansion, and we all sat around and had a coffee with him, and he said, I'm here, what's on your mind? What's important to your constituents? And we're spilling our guts, telling them about House Bill, Senate Bill 76, telling them about the conservative issues. And when he was giving his budget address, I leaned over to the guy next to me, and I said, we wrote that speech. He put everything in it that we talked about. And he put property tax in it because he knows how important it is to some of us. But the difference between what he wants to do and House Bill 860, what he wants to do is he's talking about increasing the sales tax from 6 to 6.6, and then he's talking about going from 3.07 to 3.7. But what he fails to tell you is that only about 30% of those dollars are going to go towards reduction of property tax. The other 60 or 70 are going to go for new spending. So the difference is House Bill 860, it will reduce, they're throwing the figure around the 50%, and it would be the 3.07 to 3.7, it would be 6 to 7, but there's no expanding the base. The base would stay, there would be no, there would be no further things that would be taxable. But I want to tell you why I voted for that bill. And Mark and Tom will tell you, if it had not been for the Berks delegation, that bill would have failed. And some people we were very concerned because we said, our people want property tax elimination. They don't want reduction because they're scared that down the road, that property tax, that school property tax is going to continue to go up.
There's the key right there, if I might interrupt. What assurance is in this budget or this bill, the budget is proposed or the bill, that says, okay, we're going to reduce your property taxes by X number of dollars, and what's in place to keep the school districts from implementing an increase?
I'll give Mark.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like you to see our vote, which was 105, as a vehicle to continue the process, all right? Imperfect. David Baldinger said this is not bad news for House Bill or Senate Bill 76. I think everybody's familiar with David. I spoke to David before the vote. Because it did not extinguish the school district's school director's property tax raising ability, I was concerned. I will not vote for a finished product unless it eliminates the school board's taxing ability and actually permanently slays the beast. Now,
Can I ask you why you're on that? These bills you're talking about, so it was a step in the right direction.
David Baldinger said this, it is, and I have a sheet in the back with these exact quotes. There's 200 of them. He said, and I quote, "It is merely another step in the process. Please do not beat up on any House Bill 76 supporters in the House who voted for the Sailor bill." We went to leadership. Had that vote not come out of the House, the three of us don't vote for it, and one other person in Berks County. Think of it this way. Jim Cox, who authored property tax elimination, HB 76, realized, as well as the rest of us, we had to make a tactical vote to keep this thing alive. If that vote failed in the House, it's done, and that's the voice of the leader. That's the voice of the man who controls the legislative calendar, said we're finished with it and we're moving on. It is our desire that our property tax elimination bill, SB 76, on the other side of the aisle will be amended into the product that we send them. And so, folks, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm not interested in renting or leasing or having a timeshare with the government of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's only one solution to this problem, and it's freedom-based. It is the consummate elimination of the school-based property tax.
So I'm hearing from all three of you that it's not a done deal. This could be incorporated into the budget.
Every Democratic leader in the House voted for the Sailor Amendment.
Okay.
And as I recall, and I could be wrong, but as I recall, I think the Speaker of the House voted no. So, you know, it's a split House. Forget the politics, it's the issue. And we stuck together on that. And I do believe that if it comes up in the Senate, that they will have the votes to get it amended for total elimination. That's what the vehicle hopefully can be then put into the budget, because
That's
gonna
what
be
I'm
part
trying to
of it.
hear, is it, okay?
Yeah, and I gotta admit, I was the last man standing. I was gonna vote against it, and my colleagues convinced me that, and I want you to think about something. I want you to think about a tough decision that is, okay? Because if you vote for House Bill 860, you got one group saying, we want elimination and you're just reducing, and they get upset with you. And then if you vote against it, then they say, oh yeah, he wants to vote to increase our sales tax and our personal income tax. He wants to. So it is, but it was a calculated decision, and all of us talked, and we felt that the only way, and Jim Cox came to me and said, the only way that we keep Senate Bill, House Bill 76 alive is to vote for this bill and get it over to the Senate. If we had voted against it, if the Burke delegation had voted against it, it would have been dead, and we wouldn't hear any more about property tax.
Last line from David Baldinger: "It was necessary to move the discussion forward, that particular vote that we made, and despite their reservations, they did the right thing."
Thank you very much. We have some clarification on that school tax bill. A question from the audience. If a law passes raising income tax and sales tax without eliminating property tax, what's going to stop the legislature from raising all three whenever they decide they want more money?
I will not support that. I mean, what were the goal, you know, the way the governor's proposing it, and that's not going to happen. I mean, it just, we'll see with the budget that comes on from Bill Adolph in the House, that it's going to be completely different. And then, of course, when it gets over to the Senate, they'll tinker with it, and it'll be a conference committee, which will
I think the question is in the future. Like, say this passes this time, how do you prevent the legislature down the road? And nobody has a crystal ball, but how do you prevent that from happening?
You got to elect people that are going to keep their word and stay the course. I mean, it's going to be up to people like you. We're not going to be around forever in these positions. There's going to be new members in the General Assembly, and if we do finally vote to eliminate it, put a provision in there that if they ever want to put it back in there again, it has to be a statewide vote. I mean, there are things you could put in there that could ever prevent that from happening, and say, if you ever want to go back to the school district property tax, it has to be voted on statewide.
Yeah, if I can, just real quickly, I want to tell you about how passionate I am about, we've got to eliminate school property taxes. I introduced an amendment to that House bill, and the amendment was that you could not raise the property tax without a referendum. It would have to be a referendum. In this case, each school district, there would have to be a referendum. And it went down in flames, but the purpose was to drive the message, and that is elimination, not reduction.
See, that's a point that I was making, similar to what Jerry was saying. If you put that language into the bill, both 76s, that the only way would be a statewide vote to redo the local property tax, then it's up to the taxpayers. And I kind of doubt they'd ever want to do that again.
I don't think so. This has been an ongoing issue, and actually an issue that was born here in Berks County. If you travel across the state, there's not nearly the passion for property tax elimination. So let's turn our attention to Beth Ann Rumford and give us some insight as to, across the state, from Americans for Prosperity, why would there be any resistance to this?
To
House Bill 76, eliminating
property tax? Yeah, Berks County is a hotbed of issues surrounding property taxes. The property taxes are implemented by school districts, and not all the school districts have made the same decisions that the school districts here have. So it's not an issue all over the state, which I know is talked about quite a bit for folks where it definitely is an issue. But I wanted to point out, just recently in Michigan, the legislature put before the voters a transportation tax, and on a referendum. It failed 80% to 20%. So this idea of this existing legislature cannot tie the hands of a future legislature. So to your point, ultimately, depending on what happens, especially with the bill that was passed by the House, 504, with Stan Saylor's language, there isn't anything that really fundamentally can limit school districts or the legislature, school districts from raising the property tax again, or a legislature in the future saying, we need the money to fill a budget gap, so we're not going to send that money back into the school districts to reduce property tax. So that's just reality on the language that's here today that we're looking at. So the idea that at least voters can determine for themselves whether or not they want those taxes to go up in the future is fundamentally the right approach, I would say.
So it's up to, again, being re-engaged voting constituency, and it's very cool that you guys are spending your evening here and listening to this and participating in this, and hopefully you can take that home and get more people next time.
And not everybody does this work that you guys do. I mean, to the question about how do you limit corruption, they're absolutely right. I mean, if you're not there to hold them accountable, groups like AFB, groups like you, to hold lawmakers accountable, it is very easy to make bad decisions in Harrisburg. Because you're negotiating with people within Harrisburg, and that's a very different pot than the rest of us who operate out in the economy and out in the communities. So making sure that you're always talking to your legislators helps keep them connected to what's important to you. But that doesn't happen everywhere. So one of the things that we work on is really getting people engaged at that grassroots level, because that's the way to make sure bad things don't happen.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of topics here. We're going to sneak this one in because it's from the audience and you came out, so I want to get to your questions. And there's a number of questions here about welfare, so we want to go to those. But first, is there really a possibility of our legislative body shrinking in numbers? We have one of the largest legislative bodies in the nation.
Yeah, I think I should take that one. House Bill 153 is I'm the prime sponsor, and it deals with the House of Representatives. It would reduce the House of Representatives. Originally, it was to be reduced from 203 to 153. It was amended in committee, and it was changed from 153 to 151. I won't go into the long story, but there's a crazy story about that in terms of why they went from 153 to 151. But what I will say is, this is not an easy process. It passed the House, it goes over to the Senate. If it passes the Senate, then it needs to get advertised in a paper. Well, I think it's one paper per county. And then in the next session, again, it needs to pass the House, it needs to pass the Senate, and then here's the important thing. It goes on the ballot as a referendum so that you, the people that pay the bills, get to make the ultimate decision.
Will that mandate redistricting by default if it would pass? You'd have to
No,
redistrict?
it would probably, from what I'm gathering, it would take effect in the next reapportionment in 2020. But it's still, I mean, we've got legislators that introduced legislation to reduce the size of the legislature over the course of 50 years. I mean, come on, let's do it, let's get it done. It won't save a ton of money, but it will save money. And more importantly, I think anybody that's ever been down there and they've seen the actions of 203 people on that floor, it's just crazy. It's pandemonium, as Tom just said, and I think we get down to 151, I think it's easier to build consensus.
What's the number of this bill?
The number of this bill is House Bill 153.
Anybody who wants to see the size of legislature shrink, House Bill 153, it's at least on the table in committee?
It passed the House.
Passed the House, it's in the Senate now.
It's in the Senate now.
All your senators.
Yeah, and there's another bill that would reduce the size of the Senate, and that would go from 50 to 37, I believe. And Representative Fred Keller is, and that also passed the House, and that went over to the Senate. And I'll bet you the Senate will have no problem with reducing the House, but let's see what they do with the Senate.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yes, I'm actually working on a bill to eliminate all representatives from Schuylkill County. I think and I co-sponsored Jerry's legislation, it's a good start, and I applaud the gentleman. It doesn't go far enough, all right? Because now we've got 151. Texas, which is 5 times the landmass, has international ports, and it's got twice the population, has a legislature that meets every other year. Now, if we can get this thing moving, that's a good place to begin. But that's not the only problem that we have in Pennsylvania, because I guarantee the lobbyists aren't going to roost year-round in Harrisburg. I'm perfectly fine with a smaller government, more efficient, meeting on a part-time basis. And then we'll start to get serious about the infectious influence of many of these ineffective programs that have somebody at the trawl. It gets back to living within your means. When I ran for the jury commissioner position in Berks County, I said we didn't need jury commissioners. I didn't say we needed to reduce the number of jury commissioners, and I petitioned the legislature, and guess what happened? We got a bill to eliminate jury commissioners, a layer of government in Berks County, and when I went to the House of Representatives, I co-sponsored legislation to allow other counties to eliminate layers of government. And guess what? That adds up to real savings. We don't have to wait for somebody else to move. We can move on our own. My predecessor had his own secretary in Harrisburg. You know what I did? I went and I said, let's save some money. I will share this secretary with another member. I went back a year later and I said, those of us that are doing it, how much money did we save? $600,000 in 1 year by doing one small thing.
I know, well-paid secretary, right?
My very good friend here, he left out the good part. I was the chairman of judiciary that eliminated the position that he recommended jury commissioners. He and Randy Pyle were Republican Democrat. And I called them both. I said, you want me to run that bill? Elimination? I'll run it. I ran it, and it became law, and we eliminated it.
Round of applause, please.
Congratulations.
True story.
All right, welfare, let's attack welfare. The exact increase in welfare spending in this budget. It's vague looking. I'm betting Beth Ann Mumford knows what it is. She's going to look it up. Maybe she'll look it up. In the meantime, do any of you gentlemen know the exact number of the welfare spending?
Well, let me just say this. And my financial consultant and I were looking at, and he kept picking on people that were welfare fraud, welfare. I said, yeah, I grant you. that does go on. However, if any of you caught the news within the last several months, the nursing homes overbilling, big time.
Yep.
Some of the hospitals, big time. Doctors, pharmacies. I mean, I see the small potatoes that is stolen by some individuals, and that should stop, and we need to correct it. However, the bigger pieces, that one, we're talking several $1 million in Lehigh County just recently, overbilling from one of the nursing homes. I mean, there's not enough audits being performed to stop some of this stuff because they just don't have enough auditors in the Auditor General's department to keep an eye on where all of this money's going. When you talk about $13 billion with the state and then the federal money piled on top of that, you know, we've got to be a little bit more careful how we cover those bills that come in from the medical community, the nursing homes. Trust me, there ought to be ways at the federal level to have identification cards for people that need to get help. I have nothing to say disagreeable about that. However, on the other hand, if everybody had an identification card that was receiving, they couldn't steal from other states, you couldn't get double overlapping, you could have some controls. That's my thoughts.
How much of every tax dollar, and these are tough questions, I don't even know if you would have this without looking it up. 39 cents of every tax dollar goes to welfare.
We went from 11.
Representative Knowles knows his stuff.
11.22, we're going over $600 million to 11.91 on the spend. Let me ask you this question. Did you vote for a spend number on human services of $600 million more annually, with over $500 million? Is that what you were thinking of when you went to the poll? We need more spending in this area. But let me just share something very briefly. I was talking to my daughter. We drove 3 hours to get to a veterans event, and I got to drive 3 hours this evening to get back where we came from. And we're pleased to be here. I was talking to my daughter about the way we grew up. I didn't know I was poor, but we grew up poor. My dad was a machinist. There was 5 of us kids, and he'd come back from work. He got up real early in the morning, worked for Western Electric, and then he had dinner with us. We spent a little bit of time together, and guess what he did? He went to his second job. You know what? Some of you folks in this room have done the same thing. I don't think we're empowering people by creating a culture of dependency, where children see their parents, and this isn't everybody, and God bless, we're the first to step to the head of the class to help out. But there's a group of people out there that are milking this system. There's a group of people out there. I'm all for helping, all right? And my daughter will tell you that, and I'm not going to pat myself on the back here. But I'm going to say this. We are creating enclaves, not just groups or families. We are creating enclaves of dependency in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We're taking it out of the pocketbook of the hard-working class men and women in this state, and we're giving it to somebody else, and we're training them and their children that sloth should be rewarded. And we can no longer afford to do that in Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the United States of America. A $500 million increase is unreasonable. I'll vote against it.
What will you do? That's a lot of passion. I don't think anybody disagrees with that passion, Representative Gillen. But how do you'll vote against the increase, but across the board, if it's misappropriated or misused, how do you stop that?
He gives the hallelujah speech. Now you want me to give an answer, huh? No, yeah, you gotta. I give it to him all the time, and he gives it back to me, by the way. But I want you to think about something. Out of every dollar, I did look this up. 39 cents of every dollar goes to welfare. And I keep calling it welfare, Tom. I don't call it human services. 41 cents of every dollar goes to education. 8 cents out of every dollar goes to corrections. 4 cents out of every dollar goes to debt. And 8 cents out of every dollar goes to everything else. Goes to everything else. So you gotta go, where do you go look for the money? I mean, the money, you're talking welfare, you're talking education. I just think, it just drives me crazy, and I won't go, I stand in the line at convenience stores, and I see, I tell the story about, I went over to the Turkey Hill, and I came back and my face was red. I said, my God, you okay? And I said, I'm just upset. I was just over at Turkey Hill, and here's this young woman, and she's got more tattoos on her than Popeye the Sailor, and she's standing there, and she's got chips, and she's got hoagies, and she's got all this stuff, and she pulls out her access card and lays it on the counter. And then she gets out, and she gets in the car, got the little baby in the back seat, the boyfriend or the husband's there, brand new car, and they drive off. How in God's name? I don't know how, but there's something wrong somewhere. I mean, I want to see a lot of right turn bills. I want to see a lot of that money, let's be honest, a lot of that money goes to people with disabilities. A lot of that money goes to senior citizens who need help. None of us want to see those people punished. But I don't care how small of a portion it is in that budget. And I gotta be honest with you, Governor Corbett kind of promised, because I remember when he came into office, our governor said that he had increased, if you remember, he had increased welfare spending, and he said that it's just such a big issue that we gotta wrap our arms around it, and we gotta get it under control. And honestly, he never did.
Okay, we talk about welfare fraud in a number of ways, for the recipients and for the institutions that are billing. So there's fraud on a couple of different levels. As far as the recipients, does anybody here on the panel support drug testing in order to get benefits?
Yeah, I have no problem.
Is there any bill out there that proposes that?
Yeah, my job.
Where is that bill?
It's sitting in committee.
Why doesn't it come out of committee? Where's the lack of support?
Because I can't convince the chairman to move it. I mean, bear in mind that the chairman have a lot of, they've got a lot of power. And Dave Largel did, I don't remember the bill, but Dave Largel had passed it, it was signed into law, and that's random drug testing for felons. It has proven to be very successful. I wanted to expand that. I introduced my legislation. I introduced it last session, I introduced it this session, and the attorneys told me, like, why are you introducing it? Well, that's unconstitutional. I said, well, if it's unconstitutional.
Why is it unconstitutional?
I don't know. They said
You're drug tested for a job.
Well, exactly. But they are telling me that it is unconstitutional to drug test people who get welfare. And they said to me, well, what about you? I said, hey, I'll get drug tested anytime you want me to. I don't have a problem with that. But
What article does it, where is it unconstitutional? What portion of the Constitution does it violate?
I don't know that. I really don't.
Can we hear from Beth Ann? Where do the Americans for Prosperity stand on this issue?
Well, we focus on economic issues, not...
Welfare is an economic issue.
Yes. So I was going to get back to that. So to the point of spending on health and human services, which used to be called the Department of Welfare, which I call it that as well. One thing that we would argue is that if we can find and create in Pennsylvania opportunities for economic and job and personal growth, then the need to spend that money or the desire to spend that money is going to be reduced. And I'll just point out, when you look at Pennsylvania relative to all the other states in the country, we're 45th in job growth, we're 47th in income growth, and we're 48th in population growth. We continue to lose people from this state instead of bringing new people in. So where we can find ways to reduce spending, create more economic opportunity, I think that overall is going to do a better job of moving people out of a system that they're depending on. In a lot of ways, they're trapped in. We want people to look for and find and create opportunity, and so we support policies and programs that will help do that.
That speaks a great deal to the culture that Representative Gillen was speaking of earlier, the culture of welfare and entitlement, and it's being taught. If your parents don't go out to work every day, well, then the children think that is normal.
We passed legislation under Governor Dick Thornburgh, and I voted for it, welfare to work, okay? And I'll never forget when I was down at the sewage treatment plant with then Councilman Lenardziak, who's since passed away. I saw young women down there taking out these stones from the pits. I said, Eddie, what's this all about? He said, well, they have to put in so many hours each month in order to get their check. And if they're able-bodied, then not sick people or people who are, if they were able-bodied, they had to get to do some kind of work, and they were taking the stones out, washing them off out of the circulating pits down there at the sewage treatment plant. So I know we had that. I don't know which governor or legislature tinkered with it, but I know that that was, and I think still is, on the books, and I think they still have to do so many hours of community service in order to get a check. But I don't know how whatever governor we have will enforce that. But I know that we did that under Dick Thornburgh. I was there now, I know that we did it.
Can we move from welfare to prevailing wage? Prevailing wage requirements on taxpayer-funded construction projects add as much as 30% to public school construction costs. States like Ohio have freed up more than $500 million annually by eliminating this requirement. From the audience, prevailing wage, when can we get rid of it up to $100,000 so that all work is the same work rather than prevailing wage?
I'll be yes, I have been all on.
We have a Republican legislature with a Republican governor. I don't want to dampen the environment in the room. It may be a little unrealistic. Whatever my wish list is, whatever my package of desires are. I noticed we have a school director sitting over here. I'll ask you, are you interested in prevailing wage on your school construction projects? You want it gone, because who's it going to save money? It's going to save the taxpayers money. And you know what? I'm involved in this business to rescue the taxpayer. We've got a fundamental problem here with a litany of bad laws. We are not secure in our homes. We are subjected to unreasonable seizure. The spending is not only out of control, it's titanic. Each of you has one of these sheets, and I'm closing with this because we're closing in on 8:30. Back at my table there, a statement from David Baldinger relative to the legislation we pushed from the House over to the Senate. People are always asking me, well, where are dollars from education? Talking about increased education spending, both Republican House leadership as well as the governor. You look at the Horse Race Development Fund, over $200 million moving through the Horse Race Development Fund. You look at standardized testing and the development of standardized testing in Pennsylvania, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you look at the amount of money that's going into economic development in this budget, including bonding, we have a tried and true and tested plan for economic development. It's called you keeping your own money in your own pocket and putting your own dollars at risk as an entrepreneur and joining the class of 763,000 small business people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which is the engine that drives this economy and also creates jobs in Pennsylvania. When you hold on to your own hard-earned money and spend it the way that you choose to, all Pennsylvanians will prosper in that environment.
We're all going to go home tonight. Thank you very much. It is near the end. But I'm going to sneak this. Okay, you want
I
to
just
go
want to
ahead?
jump in. One of the things that has been proposed that I think we're all in agreement on, and this is going to be a real acid test. I've been supporting and pushing with legislation to eliminate the capital stock and franchise tax for years. Finally, they're saying we're going to do it this year. I hope that happens. That's one. That's a big boost for the business community. The second is reducing the C&I tax, cutting it in half from 9 9.9 to, I guess, 4.5 or somewhere around there. And I think that would be spread out over a 2-year period. So there are some good things that we really need to do, and I think it would really help our economics and our business community if we were to do those kinds of things.
How about the portion of the budget that is putting money toward distressed cities? I believe that is being increased, the municipal funds, that is being increased, but not to the pre-bust number. But there's an increase there, and it allows a little bit more time.
You know, I just don't know what to say about that. I see these failing cities, and they want us to bail them out, and I have real concerns about it. I have real reservations about it. I just get scared that I'm very upset because we've just become a country of entitlements. I mean, it used to be that there was this large group of people that work, and then there were small groups that, for whatever reason, couldn't work, or for whatever. But it just scares me that the working pool, that the working people, that pool is shrinking so much. And I don't know when it's going to break. I mean, I just don't know when it's going to break. And I mean, do we bail out every city? Do we bail out every, you know, I don't know. I don't know that that's our job. I mean, I think we need to help them, assist them in different ways, but they've got to make some tough decisions. I think being a school board, I think being a city, I think being a borough, you know, if there's ways that we can help them, I don't have a problem with that.
There's a $78 million boost in the budget for the State Department of Community and Economic Development, largely targeted to the Act 47 Municipal Distress Program. I'm hearing from all of you, you support the opportunity for more jobs and less welfare. So what legislation is in place, if any, that would perhaps redirect that money to programs that would create jobs, redirect that money for small business owners or entrepreneurs, and alleviate some of this?
I think there's a very good chance that you will see that number shrink. I don't know that you will see it go away. You know, one of the things that you need to understand is that, I mean, this Commonwealth, and you can agree with it, it's just so diverse, it's just so different. I mean, you know, I tell people about one of our legislators from Philadelphia, and he just has a completely different perspective on this whole thing than we do. And whether it be property tax, or whether it be social issues, you know, but the point I'm getting to is, there's going to have to be a certain amount of compromise. We need to come to an agreement on a budget. I've got a real problem in terms of, there's no way that I'm going to vote for a $33.8 billion budget, an increase of $4.7 billion in spending. There's no way I'm going to vote for that, I can tell you that.
We have to wrap it up. If you could for like 1 minute.
Yeah, it'll be less than a minute. I'm gonna conduct a referendum now. All right? I want your active participation. If you think sending hundreds of millions of more dollars to Philadelphia will solve the problem that ails Philadelphia, please put your hand up in the air. It's just going to take hundreds of millions more dollars. I knew a middle-class family a number of years ago that looked at housing in Reading, and my good friend Tommy Calderone represents a substantial portion of the city. I was that person, and I was with my wife, and I looked at a piece of real estate, and I called the real estate agent, and I asked one question. I said, Will knows what's coming. I said, what's the property tax on this particular housing unit? It was where I wanted it to be. It was attractive. We would accomplish many of our housing needs through this piece of property. And here's what the real estate agent said to me. You would have to ask that question first. She told me, and it was the last time I had a conversation with a real estate agent about moving into the city of Reading. You think more dollars are going to solve this problem? Let's get your house in order first, and we'll help you out.
Hey, Representative Knowles, I'm sorry, we do have to wrap it up, and we can hear the final word from Representative Calderone.
That means he want to run against Calderone.
God bless you all. It was a good time here tonight.
There you go. Thank you.
Good Memorial Day.
And from Beth Ann. unleashed, and bring a friend with you next time.
Thank you very much, Joe. Let's give a hand to Joe, our moderator, our MC, and to our panel. Before we wrap up, I'd like to make a couple little announcements. We just got this handed to us. Another Monday celebration for Memorial Day is at the Maiden Creek Church at 11 a.m. Speaker is Colonel Wagner, retired Marine General, or Marine, did you write this, Rod? Okay, whoever wrote it, I'm sorry, I'm not reading your writing very well. There's a cemetery service at 11:45. American Legion 625 is having a rifle salute sponsored by the Blandon Lions Club, and lunch is available after the service. I read that already, right? I said Muhlenberg. Did I not say Muhlenberg Dietrich Park earlier, everybody? All right, Rod's gonna wrap up.
Okay. Before I offer my own thank yous, I just had to say something. We talk welfare, and everybody understands welfare checks, but if you heard some of my talks earlier in the year, I can only mention two, and there's a lot of time for it, but remember, we dumped Wright Bill and Jubileer. They each took $100,000 up front. Wright Bill gets $80,000 a year, Jubileer $100,000 a year. That's typical. I can go through a list of 20 that are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on pensions. That's the end of the spectrum that bothers me. Those people living off day to day, yeah, I know they're on welfare, but I go back to something else. In 1995, I wrote an article, GATT and NAFTA, the unintended consequences of these so-called fair trades. When we in this country give our workers compensation, pensions, time off, vacations, and everything else, and the EPA comes in and makes you do certain things and whatever, and China has no restrictions, no minimum wage, no vacation, no anything, and you go to Walmart, everything says made in China. Those people on welfare don't have a job because the factory down the street, when the kid graduated from Reading High and only knew how to do one thing, and that's grind widgets for a living, he took home a paycheck. The factory's gone. They're all gone. And that's the other end of the spectrum. I didn't want to get into a soapbox, but boy, when I hear welfare, it bothers me. But I know the other end of the spectrum, that bothers me more. So much for that. I want to say one thing about these gentlemen. We didn't hear one thing tonight that I'm glad we didn't, and that is we got to pass the budget to see what's in it. Okay, folks, did we learn anything tonight? How many, put your hand up, did you really think it was worth it? Well, I appreciate that, and I can see that we got to do more of this. And I think we left more informed, at least even know beyond the bills how government works. I want to thank these three gentlemen for coming here this evening. I'm just sorry that the other 9 or 10, and especially want to thank our citizens advocate here, Beth Ann, for joining these three gentlemen and giving the perspective of those that aren't elected into office. And I want to especially say that Joe Mayor, you far exceeded my expectations. And I thank you very much. We're going to write questions, you can have them. Thank you very much, folks.
And you're taking my papers. Everybody's taking my paper. Okay. All right, I'd just like to let you know about next month's meeting. How many in here have children? How many have grandchildren? Some of you probably got great-grandchildren. Great-greats, just by chance? Okay. Well, if you care about those kids, especially the ones that are still in school, then it would be a good idea to be here at the next meeting and bring any friends or family that also have children who are going through the public education system right now. Oh.
Folks, you put questions to us. We didn't get them all in, as you can understand. What I intend to do is we'll write these questions up and we'll get it to the appropriate politician and get answers, and we'll post them on our website so they won't go wasted. Thank you.
Yeah, email the 10 that weren't here. That's Mark Gillen's suggestion. Anyways, next month's meeting is on Common Core. We will have the chairman of the State Board of Education will be here. We'll have Americans for Prosperity, Pennsylvanians for Restoring Education, Berks Area School Board representatives. I think we see one up front here. 3, okay. I only know the one, so sorry. But anyways, next month would be a very good meeting to be here, and bring your children who have children in school, whatever, because this really does affect them and their education. At this time, I'd like to close this meeting in prayer. I'd like to thank Mary Shelter for showing up here. We have a lot of tables in the back. Please visit them. And John Hyde back there, raise your hand, John. If you guys don't eat the last 17 hot dogs, we're going to force feed John, and he doesn't eat anymore, so go back and have a hot dog. Let's close this meeting in prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we do thank you and praise you for this opportunity we've had to come together. We do pray for our servicemen and women, Father, who are currently serving. We pray you protect them, keep them safe in any conflict they may be in any part of the world. And we just pray, Father, that we would all remember them this coming Memorial Day, and that we do our part, whatever that may be, to help one of them, or as many as we can, with any kind of blessing we can do for them. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you all.